So this is a thing that people do on YouTube a lot, that people are into like watching, is people eating stuff.
I guess so, and I'm not sure what the appeal of it was. I think it's kind of like how I like to do the driving thing. It's like if you're doing something besides just looking in the camera and talking, or sitting in front of the microphone and talking, that it kind of creates a different sort of energy. Gotcha. Because you're in the moment and kind of, you know what I mean? Like you're a little more relaxed because you can't focus on like presentation.
I had a buddy, a rap buddy of mine, who we were on tour. He had this fantasy that he would talk about every day but not do, of like doing this web series where he just eats macaroni and cheese from different places. And he just reviews mac and cheese.
And I would love that. Being good at something but figuring out also like what the market will pay for.
Yeah.
Because so the theme of this show is, after a decade in adult, I am trying to figure out how to be an adult. So the show is called Important Adults.
That hit me right here. Right here.
So Important Adults is like, I'm going to interview my important adult friends, and we're gonna talk about adult shit, grown up shit. You're an artist, I'm an artist. Like, we're also self-made and self-produced and self-sustaining. You gotta start making some grown-up decisions and doing some grown shit. And so I wanted to have you on because you have had a successful career being independent pretty much the whole time. You've had your, is New Negroes still going on?
Not in the state that it went on this year, but you know that it's an idea that it's not dead yet.
Right. But for a moment there was like that was a moment of sort of corporate backing.
Yeah, it was weird.
But like, it was like it's at the end, sort of like
weird,
it's
man.
after 10 or 15 years of being like,
let's review that.
Okay.
Can't say I loved it. Can't say that I loved dealing with a giant corporation when it came to my creative exploits. Just because everything was a pain in the ass. Everything. Like each and every creative decision had to be approved and reviewed and refined and discussed and fought about, for ultimately what I find to be a reward that was a little lacking.
Yeah. Just
in terms of like, being on terrestrial cable, as fortunate of a position as that was to be in, it's just not something a lot of people have access to right now. So we do all that fighting, and ultimately
no one watches it.
Or people's parents watch it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not like anybody in our target demo, really.
Right. So that comes to the thing about like things the market will bear. And I think I had, for so long, I had viewed myself as not a grown-up, or this is like what I do as like not a business. That I didn't pay attention to stuff like that. I think I just always thought that someone would come in someday and take over the business part of it, or I would write a script that would just get me a bunch of money, or I just thought of it as something very esoteric, this idea of analytic and demographics and figuring all these things out. And a part of it is like the democratization of the means of production has enabled us to be able to just look at the analytics ourselves.
Right.
You know what I mean? But also I've learning how to interpret that data is also its own skill.
That's one of the, I end up talking about streaming music a lot, right?
Okay, yeah.
Because it's such a different way of consumption when it comes to music, and in a lot of ways it has meant a lot less revenue for musicians, right?
Yeah.
And same as writers, same as adult performers, same as anything. Like once the mode of consumption went from people paying per unit to consume a thing, to you just subscribe to a thing, or you just go to a place where everybody has it for free already. Like once that takes hold, it drives down the value of everything.
Right.
So that's been a big change we've gone into streaming, is that there's less money coming in to the system. So creators are getting paid less. One great benefit though is you get all this damn data.
Yes.
You get all of this damn data. Like I can log into my Spotify and find out, they show me who's listening right now, and maybe not like which, like not individual people, but like how many people,
right?
I can get this list that shows me like, oh, you have this many fans in this city, this many fans in that city, this many. And so when I'm trying to work with my agent and book my tour, well, we know where to go.
Exactly. And like also on my Twitter, when I look at my analytics, they'll tell me who my fans are. But at the same time, also, like, my OnlyFans has been a huge thing that has changed, sort of, has really given performers back a lot of money, but control. And I also, it taught me a lot more about who is actually consuming my product as well, because, you know, on the back end, I can see, and through messages and stuff, and I found out that, you know, according to Twitter, like, this is who was watching me, but then according to my paying customers, this is who was watching me.
I see.
And, so there's this whole big thing about censoring adult performers and people like that on Instagram and different social media platforms. And then an article came out where this woman was talking about how, like, by changing her gender on Instagram, she suddenly stopped being shadow banned and all this stuff, right?
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And
wow.
And I got the idea so I changed my gender on Instagram to male. And then I went on Twitter to go change my gender because I'd never declared a gender on Twitter. And they had declared me male already. And I went and fished around. And what had happened is, because I hadn't declared a gender, they had assumed I was male based on my activity on Twitter. Which is, and I'm like, oh, so what? I probably because I interact with a lot of porn accounts. But I was like, I did a thread on Twitter about, this is why when people say science is racist and sexist and all these things, is because those algorithms are designed by people. So why did they assume I was male just because I was interacting with porn accounts? Because whoever designed the algorithm was like, well, it's men who watch porn. It's like all of these things come together. And maybe that used to be true,
right?
But that's not true anymore, because half my fucking followers on OnlyFans are women, and a lot of them are young black queer women. I don't know how I got the young black woman.
Because you got good scenes with black dudes.
Yeah,
I think that helps a lot.
So their information was wrong, right? And so I think the other part about algorithms is that how it's hard to gauge how correct they are.
I mean, you know what? It's been really funny too. You take it back Spotify for a sec. So, you know, I have my account as a consumer, and it gives me my report of all the shit I've listened to already, right? It's mostly accurate, except for the fact that 3 days out of the week I take my son to school, and so then half of what we're playing in is shit he likes, which is very different than mine. Right. So, you know, like, Spotify as a company doesn't realize what percentage of that is me, and it doesn't seem to be any systems in the algorithm for, like, oh, maybe there's another person, you know. So it just it has no idea what to make of me, right? Because my consumption choices by themselves are already confusing, right? And if you add his in, it just looks like a complete mess.
I was just reading a book called Square Meal, which was a culinary history of the Great Depression, and it's not a tangent. So the project of the book had to do with food and nutritional pyramids and school lunch programs and things like this. But I got a different takeaway from it, which is, you know, there's these waves that we have as people in terms of our relationship to new technology. So a big thing in the 30s was taking the kitchen into the laboratory and trying to pull minerals and vitamins out of things and see if you could enrich other, like, cheaper crops so you get enriched white bread. Like, why that is because during the Depression, people were malnourished. So even if they were able to get foods, they were these really low-cost bulk foods that had no actual nutritional value,
right? So it was
an
attempt to see if they could basically synthesize nutrition out of something and put it into cheaper items.
And also even, like, and so you see the great-grandchild of that today would be, like, protein bars. Right. Cliff bars. Like, we have this idea of nutrition bars, which is we still have this idea that you can get nutrition from chemicals, like, which you can't. Vitamins are a scam. Like, you have to get, your body has to get the vitamins from breaking down the food and like releasing the enzymes.
Similar to the difference in nutrition when you drink fruit juice versus eating fruit.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Because the fiber's not present, so it doesn't actually get absorbed properly.
Right. But so I was reading that while I'm in an industry that is being drastically affected by algorithms. So porn, there's been a big shift over into almost all the casting now is done in corporate. There's 2 or 3 major porn companies that own all the other little studios. So like Digital Playground, Brazzers, Reality Kings, like all of those are actually owned by one company.
Get the fuck out of here,
and the
man.
people at that one company, they're the ones now doing casting. And what they do is they go on Pornhub and they see how things are doing. And then they go on their own sites, of course, and see which scenes are popular, how long do they watch a scene, which girls sell, which, you know what I mean?
So the data is going back up there and informing who
right.
it is.
And then they send a list to their directors and say, like, these 10 girls. It is, to a degree, choking out certain people's careers.
I'm curious about how they analyze them. So they get
I
data.
am too. There's a company that owns a couple different studios, and they wanted to book us. They had just shot a girl in a interracial scene for one site, and then she had been cast to do a scene. Hired her for this other site to do like a more fetishy kind of scene, and then the scene she had done, the interracial scene she had done for the other studio they own, had released and it hadn't done well, right? So then they call the director and say, oh, her scene did terrible, cancel her for the other scene and cast someone else, right? Now, and I thought this is horrible because I'm like, but here's the thing is, why did her scene in the interracial scene, like, why did that scene do badly? Was it because
there's so many factors.
She wasn't the type for the demographic that watched that kind of scene? She didn't have good chemistry with her scene partner.
Chemistry seems like a huge factor.
Yeah, like she didn't have good chemistry with her scene partner.
Direction seems like a huge factor.
Bad direction. Set design could have been off. Maybe they didn't like her wardrobe. Maybe they didn't like the scenario, right? And then even if it was horrible for that demo, but maybe, like, what is her fan base? Because if she has a really fetishy fan base, then maybe that scene for this other studio
would have been,
like, maybe that would have been, she would have been hugely popular with them because, like, that's more her oeuvre and that's where she excels. How are they analyzing the data? And I think that's the question a lot of people are asking because they feel so empowered by numbers. And I feel like it's very much like the 30s when they were like chemistry, calories, nutrition. They were just starting to break down food in these ways, like chemically, and the whole thing in the 30s was better living through chemistry, right? And that was the big thing for like the big World's Fair. The big World's Fair had this like modern kitchen, and it looked almost like a science lab. And right now, with all these streaming platforms, and we're getting all this data, just like Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, we're all like, my data, what are they doing with my data? Data is the new sort of chemistry of the 30s, where like our relationship to it is like, okay, yeah, everything's great if it's got numbers by it, but you know, just because you have the numbers doesn't mean you know what they mean.
I actually think it's far more dangerous too now, because not only, you know, and what the story you just told is horrifying for a few reasons.
Oh, very.
But even if you're not a person who is engaging with these numbers as a contractor, even if you're just a consumer,
right,
it's still horrifying because there are still people who have the ability to adjust the world in front of you based on numbers.
Yep.
You know, and like
exactly.
that's where it gets scarier than some of the other ages that we lived through before, because we engage with the world digitally so much.
Right.
You know, that's why, you know, we're all paranoid about, oh, Facebook is hearing my conversations because I'm getting all of these ads. Like,
right.
We know that there's these capabilities of people controlling what it is that we see or don't see.
Right.
And we have no direct influence on those levers in any way, except for like via our consumption. You know, it's really, it's kind of daunting. You know, we're living through some shit that I don't think anybody's lived through before, and we don't know what it's going to do to us yet, you know?
Yeah, because it's like information just like spraying the fucking area, and you don't know who's receiving it. But there's other factors, you know, like who's interpreting that data, you know, not understanding like how things are keyworded and how keywords affect things. And then also the groupthink of if you, like, I like the fact that Instagram was talking about taking away likes on images, because it's like we're also influenced by, like, if we see something already has 1 million views, we just assume that means it's of better quality. Do you know what I mean? And so it's also this mentality where maybe we overlook things because, oh, well, they only have 300 subscribers, this is pretty lame, and we miss out on something amazing because, you know what I mean?
You know, I do think there's good reasoning to kind of take those metrics away, but I also think that takes away the opportunity for something to go surprisingly well. You know what I mean? Like there is a such thing as still kind of going organically viral. It's a lot more difficult now, but I think it's good for you to know when one of your tweets is bomber than another one of your tweets.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because like there's it's not like it's completely objective, but it gives you a sense of like how you're engaging with the world, like how like what makes this thing more potent than that other thing. And I think that's good information to have.
The big thing for me was understanding that the rules of the game have changed and that the game is engagement. You know, interacting with your fans and having a relationship with them. And for me as an adult performer, it kind of gets pounded into you, this really antagonistic relationship with your fans. And it's true, some of them are demanding and crude.
Dudes are gross, man. Like, I just, you know, I see some of my female friends in interactions and aren't even...
Oh, it's worse for them. I always thought mine was bad, and then
it's worse for people that aren't.
And then I looked at the DMs from my friends that are either... They're celebrities too, but they're in the mainstream. Mm-hmm. Theirs are worse. And I think it's because, like... there's a certain firewall of being a porn performer, which is they're not going to come at you so aggressive with sex stuff because you're good at sex and you get good sex and you get big dicks and all this stuff.
Oh, so they can't
there's like
talk
a level
shit.
of there's like a level of intimidation of like trying to hit on you because they also understand that you have access to, you know, that basically good dick for me is abundant and low value.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like...
So they're not just like coming up to you slanging dick.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's actually worse, I think, for girls that... And that's why I was so upset about deepfake technology. There was a porn company for a while that was offering custom deepfakes.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah, Naughty America. I was so livid.
How much did they charge for that?
I don't know, but they were saying... so, like, you can... I don't know what the deal was. Like, you are a consenting loved one. You could put a consenting loved one in this porn with this guy. And I was like, or you can take my image. I don't do anal. You could take my face, put it on a girl's body who does anal. And then, like, now someone has an anal scene of me. You know?
Which fucks up your price. Mm-hmm. If you ever one day did want to do it.
Or you hire me once. And then from then on, you just make deepfakes of me.
Jesus Christ.
And then you get girls that'll be a body double for, like, really low money because they get to be anonymous. And there you go in and you completely undercut the labor market.
Labor and technology, man. We used to think it was just grocery store clerks, but nope. It's all of us.
It's all of us. All of us.
It's just, you know, it's there's a certain, and I hate to use this word because I'm typically, as cynical as I am, I still don't like the concept of inevitability. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to technology, and just because I've seen it consume so much so quickly, it's hard to imagine that there will be morally anything that stops it. And then now it's so difficult for moments to have the same impact. Because we're all watching different things. Mm-hmm. That unity or that everybody's eyes being, you know, directed at the same location doesn't really exist anymore. You know, so like a big moment can happen in words. Right. We all can go read an article or all go do this or all go do that. But it's different than like when OJ had the police chase and how that was on every channel and there wasn't anything else to look at.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's different, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, my TV is just a giant monitor. And what I get almost all my news from YouTube.
Where do you go on YouTube for news?
There's this guy, Philip DeFranco.
I'm the second person to tell me about him this week.
Yeah, and there's something about him that just fucking works. He'll cover YouTube drama and political stuff. And, like, he'll cover all of it. He does it thoroughly. He has a presence about him that is just very level-headed. There's not a project. It doesn't have some overarching political or social project about it. It's It's just today in news, or this is. But I think it's because he's one of the first people to start incorporating stuff that's happening on YouTube and social media as culturally relevant as what's happening in Congress or what's happening in Hollywood.
You know, interesting thing for me too is that my son,
I can turn this back on.
he just turned 11, and he has every entertainment option at his disposal. He spends 85% of his time watching YouTube. 85%.
That's where I spend most of my time watching.
I am increasingly watching it more and more myself, but for me it's because I tend to want media that I consume. I want the context around it. I want other people talking about it. I want other people analyzing it. Like I basically want to have discussions with people about it, and I can't. So I go to where those discussions are taking place rapidly, you know, as opposed to podcasts, which are like once a week or whatever.
That's the thing about YouTube is like it's the time.
Yeah,
it's immediate.
Yeah, like I you know, I'm really into comic books right now. So when I get through reading a new X-Men book, there's 5 or 6 channels that have done a review, and I'll just watch all of them. You know what I mean? Rather than waiting for this podcast where they may or may not discuss it, or they're going to discuss 4 or 5 other books or whatever. So like that tends to be the way that I engage with YouTube. But that's also because I engage with it that way. I don't care if somebody's only got 300 subscribers if the content's good.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not gonna instantly gravitate towards who's the biggest. You know what I mean? Because sometimes that's good, but then sometimes there's these little gems of people who are like, oh, this is the discussion that I want to hear. Yeah. You know?
I guess my problem with stand-up comedy is you kind of get branded into this thing where everything you do is funny. And I'm more like, I can write funny things, but I at heart am a very sincere person, and at heart,
and you really care about things,
and I'm very considerate. Yes.
Well, and I mean even beyond consideration, I mean like you have values and things that you're passionate about and get angry about, and and you have to have room in your presentation.
Exactly. And so I guess for me, becoming a stand-up comedian, I suddenly felt that it was kind of just as two-dimensional as being a porn star.
Yeah, it's just it's a different flat surface for sure.
Yeah. And so the thing I loved about Twitter and about my podcast and about Boss Bitches is that those had been platforms that had allowed me to kind of be a three-dimensional person. And what I like about this next generation, and what I love about millennials and OnlyFans and streaming services and YouTube, is that it's allowed someone like me that does, all of these things. I was struggling under this old school of branding, which is like, what are you? And people make fun of influencers, but to the next generation of people, an influencer, that's a complete sentence. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I could come out with an eyeshadow palette. I could come out with a stand-up comedy album. I could come out with a fashion line, and that would all like make sense.
And it all seems to be about it's just all about partnering, though. You know, because I think the mistake that we make is we have these ideas of all these things we can do and the ability to do all these different things. We try to do them all ourselves. Yes. You know, and I think we end up burning out that way. We put effort into things that it turns out you need a lot of help to do successfully. Yeah. You know?
Oh yeah, I had burnout really bad too. That was also why things slowed down on my Patreon and other things, and the podcast and everything it wasn't just like a midlife crisis, it was also like burnout.
Yeah. It's a real deal. I mean, I think the old adage, work smarter, not harder, is something that a lot of truly independent creators really need to embrace.